We here at Onsite Public Media believe that whooping was justified. Good morning, Minneapolis. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. And we are just moving forward. This is, unfortunately, one of the last episodes of Good Morning Minneapolis that we'll be filming here. But thank you. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for the love. If you want to become a member of Onsite Public Media, this is Good Morning Minneapolis brought to you by Onsite Public Media. I'm Toussaint Morrison, I'm your host. If you want to become a member of Onsite Public Media and be able to help us document and film more stories out in the community and more programs like this, the link below is there for you. We're trying to get to 1,000 members, 1,000 members. Right now we're around 100, but the link below, you can become a member. Thank you so much. All right, in obvious news, today, Friday, June 4th, I'm growing out my hair. So if anybody is low-key, bold enough, looking to make a Street Fighter film, and you want to cast a Black Guile, I'm your Sonic Boom, baby. I'm your Sonic Boom. All right, in our headlines today, the NBA. Several incidents have occurred where fans have assaulted Black athletes in the NBA. Now that fans have been allowed to be back at stadiums and attend the games live, there have been several incidents where Black athletes have been assaulted. Now this is different than the NFL or MLB, where the NBA, you're sitting right next to folks and you're basically within proximity to say anything and do anything that you want. An example, lest we forget, Malice at the Palace. How could we forget? It's like it was just yesterday, huh? November 19th, 2004, a white fan decided to chuck a jumbo cup full of soda at the then formerly named NBA player Ron Artest. Ron Artest proceeded to then go into the stands and show that fan where he's from. What that fan did, looking back at it historically, is one of the dumbest things you could do at a live professional sporting event. Today, new fans, same racism, Black athletes still being assaulted by them. Let's go down the list. Russell Westbrook. Just last Wednesday, May 26th, Westbrook was leaving the game and a fan dumped popcorn on his head. The fan was banned indefinitely from Wells Fargo Stadium and has had his Philadelphia 76ers season ticket revoked. Next up in the same day, Trae Young. Trae Young of the Atlanta Hawks was spit on by a fan. The fan, according to the New York Knicks, has been banned from the Garden indefinitely. And lastly, Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving leaving his game Monday night in Boston. One second. Boston. We're talking about Boston, y'all. A Black man in Boston. May 31st, on his way out, almost struck by a full water bottle thrown by a fan from far above. Look, if Irving gets hit by that water bottle, that's an injury. That's not popcorn, that's not a spit, that is an actual weapon at that point being thrown from the top rafters. And the person that threw it was known as Cole Buckley. Old Cole Buckley. Cole Buckley was arrested, taken to jail, and may have assault charges brought to him. Yes, the young man-child Cole Buckley may be having assault charges brought to him. Look, if we're out here in the streets and somebody dumps popcorn on your head, they're gonna get dealt with in the streets. If somebody spits on you in real life, they're gonna get dealt with in real life. And let's take a look at this. Here's Cole Buckley walking away with the old, what do you mean? He pushed him, ref, I didn't even touch him. And here he is with the big old shit-eating grin thinking, yeah, I might be suspended from school, but hey, dad'll still let me work at the family company anyways. If you're like me, you're saying, wow, we're back here. Racial violence at the drop of a hat. Okay. And if you're not like me, you're saying, why is it always about race with you, Toussaint? And what I would say to that is what Kyrie Irving said to that.
Kind of crossroads where you're seeing a lot of old ways come up. It's been part of that. It's been that way in history in terms of entertainment, performers, and sports for a long period of time of just underlying racism and just treating people like they're in a human zoo.
Yes, Kyrie Irving is referring to the old ways. He's referring to the long history in this country of Black performers being on the road, Black entertainers being on the road, and being threatened by white mobs and audiences with death or violence. Look no further than right here in Minnesota. June 14th, 1920, 3 Black circus workers who were from out of town came to Duluth and were lynched to a crowd of thousands. Thousands of white people. The 3 Black men that were lynched to an all-white crowd were accused of rape, although the physician at the time did not find any physical evidence of rape on the alleged victim. So that brings us to now. You cannot remove the history and legacy of violence and harassment that has been brought to black people that have been traveling around the country as entertainers, and albeit with Kyrie Irving, Russell Westbrook, and Trae Young. The list goes on. And for racist fans that are attending NBA games, we have one question for you. Why are you here? What are you doing? Why are you here? 74.2% of the NBA is black. Why are you showing up here and doing this? It's like showing up to a Juneteenth celebration or time traveling to 1990 and going to a Keith Sweat concert and bringing out your anti-blackness to show everybody. We don't need to know how many black friends you don't have and just how bigoted you are. Like, just go home and take your racism nowhere else. Like, figure it out for yourself. What are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you here? Why are you here? What are you doing? I swear, black culture, black excellence, and all the amazing things that we do are some of the most emulated, imitated, and appropriated. Like I said, go be racist nowhere else. Like, of all places, you show up to the event where 3/4 of the people on the court are black, and you think, this is the place that I'll show them. Out of here. Out of here. Speaking of white folks not being able to control themselves at the sight of black excellence, recently we came upon the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre. What is the Tulsa Race Massacre, you ask? Well, it occurred in 1921, and if your teacher never taught you about it, that's okay, because most teachers haven't taught any of their students about the Tulsa Massacre. But if you have, hey, good on you. Keep teaching the kids. So what happened was there was a neighborhood called the Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma that was brimming with black-owned businesses, and it was also known as Black Wall Street. So the unique thing about Black Wall Street is that it was existing in 1921, and it had just survived 1919, which was known as the Red Summer, where white mobs went around the South and all over the country killing black people. White mobs all over the country killing black people. Also, the Klan was extremely prevalent in the South at that time. Yet here was Black Wall Street surviving. So, what happened? The summer of 1921, the local Tulsa newspaper ran an article saying that Dick Rowland, a 19-year-old black shoeshine man, assaulted Sarah Page, a 17-year-old white girl. Although Page refused to press charges against Rowland, a white mob gathered outside of the Tulsa courthouse where Rowland was being kept. What ensued from there is what we know as the Tulsa Race Massacre, where white mobs killed, looted, and terrorized anything and everything black owned, breathing, or living. This past week, testifying to a House subcommittee upon the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre was 107-year-old survivor Viola Fletcher.
I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day.
Viola goes on to ask the House subcommittee that they atone for the massacre and bring justice to what happened that day. It is extremely important to know, understand, and study and remember the Tulsa Race Massacre because it shows us what happens to black communities when they thrive economically, what happens to them culturally when they are burned down, and the generational trauma that is passed thereon. In observing what happened that day, we have to ask ourselves historically, how far back did the Tulsa Race Massacre set black people economically and emotionally? So when somebody tells you to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and you're black, you can tell them, well, we tried to a long time ago, and they burned the bootstraps and killed every black person that was wearing them. Speaking of atrocities that are part of the legacy of a country's origin, if the United States is getting its comeuppance for the genocide of indigenous peoples, Canada would love to go unmentioned. However, divert your gaze to the north. The Star writes, as word began to trickle out late last week about the discovery of more than 200 children's remains at the site of a former residential school in Kamloops, British Columbia, an emergency virtual conference call was convened with indigenous leaders across the south-central part of the province. This is a developing story of the estimated remains of 215 children being discovered at the site of an indigenous residential school. What is an indigenous residential school, you ask? Dr. Denise K. Legitimere writes with the MinPost. The schools carried out the government's mission to restructure Indians' minds and personalities by severing children's physical, cultural, and spiritual connections to their tribes. Outdated nomenclature aside, this was an act of erasure, ethnic cleansing, and colonizing stemming from white settlers in Canada, and more specifically, Catholics in Canada. The CDC writes, preliminary findings from a radar survey of the grounds of the former Kamloops Indian Residential School indicated as many as 215 children could be buried on the site. The school was run by the Catholic Church for much of its nearly 100-year existence. A lot of this is just being physically discovered and addressed. And as we said with the Tulsa Race Massacre, it is extremely important to understand, study, know, and come to grips with the country's origin on its atrocities that were committed stemming from colonization, genocide, racism, and white supremacy. Trigger warning on this next quote as to what potentially happened to these children. The CDC writes, after an exhaustive 6-year probe, the TRC found most of the children who died at residential schools perished of malnourishment or disease. Some children who attended the schools in the 1940s and 1950s were also subjected to science experiments in which they were deprived of essential nutrients and dental care. This story is important because as we see the violence brought to bodies of color throughout the history of certain countries, the other violence that's been brought to it is the hands that are writing the history books in erasing the narrative of what actually happened. This story is developing, and we will keep you updated as it rolls out. Lastly, in local news, Derek Chauvin is being sentenced. His defense attorneys are saying that he should be serving probation and time served. For those of you that don't know what that means the time that he's served in prison already and should be released and just go on probation. However, the prosecution is suggesting that he served 30 years. 30 years. It's a lot less time than what some black people are serving in prison for marijuana charges. That'll do it for us today here at Onsite Public Media. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. And as the sun has set on our day today, it is set on our show here. I can't thank y'all enough. You have my heart. You have my love. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you. You can become a member of Onsite Public Media in the link below. We will definitely see you in other shows, and we just really appreciate y'all watching and supporting and sharing the show as well. So as a goodbye, we're just going to show you just, some slow motion video of some of the plants that you saw over the course of time that we were here. Good night, and our work is never, ever, ever done.